Okay, it disgusts me that at this stage of the game, I have to do this story today, but I have to do this story today. It appears that multiple states are, pick your poison, having issues lying, falsifying, distorting coronavirus testing, case, and or death numbers. And there is no doubt that this is affecting our understanding of how effectively we are dealing with coronavirus in the United States in a bunch of different parts. And the reason why this is just sickening is last week I came to you and I said, listen, guys, I don't know why, but there are some closed states that have been shut down for months that are doing really no better than some states that have opened. Wouldn't it be amazing if states really could reopen without seeing spikes? Maybe that's possible, except now with all of these allegations of bogus numbers and dishonest numbers and suppression of numbers, it becomes a lot more difficult to know what's really going on. So here's the deal. And some of these individual components we've already talked about in the past. One example was Georgia. Georgia had reopened really early, started on, I believe it was April 24th. Their numbers didn't really look too bad. They used that data to justify continuing to reopen. Other states said, look at what's going on in Georgia. We can justify reopening. Georgia officials now admit that they had processing errors, which made it look like infections were declining when they actually were not. That data that 3 times had so-called errors was what they used to justify reopening more and more and more, when in reality, the numbers were far worse than they were publicizing. That's Georgia. Florida, I already told you about the situation where cause of death was being suppressed for a while, which was artificially holding down coronavirus deaths. I told you last week about this data modeler sort of tech person who was pushed out / fired. We still don't have the full explanation after she said, I'm not going to falsify data, which was what she was allegedly told to do. That's Florida. Arizona has become one of the most open states, and they have also become one of the fastest spiking states on a percentage basis. They cut off a team of health service experts who were modeling the state data. It wasn't looking great. Instead, Arizona decided, the governor, Republican governor, said, hey, you know what? Let's use the federal government modeling data, which of course is much more optimistic and much more easily usable to justify reopening, although it is not reflective of what is actually going on in Arizona. Then we have this other story where the CDC and 11 different states have been sometimes combining, when they report tests, they're combining infection and antibody tests, which dramatically increases the testing rate on paper, reduces the positive rate on paper. It doesn't actually reflect how many people are catching the virus and how many active infections there are. It's absolutely insane that this has been done. And this includes Colorado, Delaware, Georgia, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Texas, Vermont, and Virginia, all mixing infection and antibody tests at one point in their reporting. Some of the states have since fixed this. That includes places like Vermont and Virginia. Unclear which other states have fixed this and which other states continue to do this. When we have a situation like in Pennsylvania, we are also dramatically undercounting what the severity of the widespread infection is, because Pennsylvania is not providing full data on cases and deaths from nursing homes. Nursing homes nationally have been huge hotspots of infection. In Massachusetts, at one point, 50 or 60% of the deaths were in nursing homes. Imagine if Massachusetts said, yeah, we'll report data except from nursing homes. You'd think the outbreak was only half as bad. Nebraska at one point told meatpacking plants, you don't have to report your cases. And the governor wrote it off and said, well, that's a business decision. No, it's a public health decision, and it's one that is propagandizing the premature opening of states. So we've sunk lower than low. We are doing in bits and pieces what Trump slams China for doing, not telling the truth about cases and deaths, and it's happening right here. All Americans should be outraged, period. This borders, China aside, this borders on the totalitarian type rewriting of reality type nonsense that we claim to be opposed to. We now simply cannot really believe that we are doing better or that some states are doing better because we're not getting accurate information. It is being suppressed to justify reopening in many states. How dare we say, how dare China cover up the numbers when we're doing the exact same thing? And they do not care. We continue to see protests without masks. We continue to see a lack of social distancing. We continue to see full bars and restaurants, often immediately within 30 minutes of states lifting some elements of the stay-at-home orders. This is a time where, listen, Massachusetts has not been perfect. There's no doubt. Charlie Baker was not the fastest, but he was much faster than a lot of other states. This is a place where, when I look at the data here in Massachusetts, number one, I can reasonably trust the data. There is transparency about nursing home deaths. There's transparency about testing numbers. The curve looks good. We have now been under 100 deaths for a whole bunch of days, 95% of a whole bunch of days. The curve is reversing. Testing is being ramped up. This is one of those times where I am genuinely glad to live in a state that is at least somewhat tethered to truth and reality. It's not been perfect. It's certainly not been perfect. But what is happening in some of these states is borderline criminal in the sense that it is distorting, it is public information, state government releasing information that is wrong to justify policies and actions that lead to more people in the hospital, more people in ICUs, and more people dying. And, all of these dishonest players, Trump at the top, but people at the state level, people at local levels, they all must suffer the consequences for their participation in this. We're going to keep covering this on Instagram at David Pakman Show. I did something funny. I posted a picture of me pre-quarantine and now to my Instagram, david.pakman. I barely recognize pre-quarantine me. It's shocking how much my physical appearance has changed during the quarantine. Check it out at david.pakman. We'll take a quick break and we have so much more coming up for you. This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. One of the things I make a priority on the show is not to perpetuate stigma for things that don't deserve it. We've talked about mental health. We've talked about many things where we should all just be respectful adults, period, and we would be better off. And Blue Chew can increase performance and give you that extra confidence you may be looking for. BlueChew.com, blue like the color blue, is the first chewable with the same FDA-approved ingredient as in Viagra and Cialis. It can be taken day or night, even on a full stomach, since it's chewable. It works twice as fast as a pill. Whenever the opportunity arises, Blue Chew is prescribed online by licensed doctors. You don't have to go to a doctor's office. You don't have to wait in line at a pharmacy. It ships right to your door in a discreet package. They're made in the USA, and since Blue Chew prepares and ships direct, it's cheaper than a pharmacy. And best of all, no more awkwardness. We've got a special deal for our viewers and listeners. Go to bluechew.com. Get your first shipment free when you use our promo code PAKMAN. That's PAKMAN. Pay just $5 shipping. That's BLUE chew.com. Promo code PAKMAN to try it totally free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper, faster choice. And we thank them for sponsoring the David Pakman Show.